What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking about summertime fishing. We're going to talk about the different types of fisheries, the bodies of water, and where these fish go, and my favorite baits to catch them this time of the year. Let's go. Summertime fishing can be very frustrating. You know, now you fish through winter, you fish through spring, you kind of had the lake to yourself, right? Now you have a lot of pleasure boaters, you got a lot more boat traffic, you have high water temps, lots of vegetation depending on the type of fishery you're in. But staying on the pattern with these fish and where they're traveling can be very hard and very frustrating. Turn my phone off. You'd think I'd learned by now. But you know, summertime, it's a great time to get out on the water, enjoy the weather, and catch a ton of bass. You know, it's not the best time to catch the biggest fish in the lake by any means. You can do it, but it is a great time to get out and catch a ton of fish. And you can fish pretty much any bait in your tackle box. So today's video, we're going to talk about my confidence baits, depending if I'm fishing a highland reservoir or a river system or a natural lake, that sort of stuff. But first, let's cover where these fish are going. You know, hopefully you guys have followed along this series, kind of teaching you where these fish position, the different routes they take in and out of their spawning transitions, the spawning bays, flats, that sort of stuff. If not, I will leave links down below in the video description of the previous videos in this series. We talked about where they go pre-spawn, we talked about where they're going for spawn and post-spawn. Now we're talking about full-fledged summertime pattern, you know, fishing deep off of ledges, off of structure like your rock piles, and staying shallow, fishing through that thick grass, either flipping or punching or throwing a frog. We're gonna cover all the baits here shortly, but let's first talk about the different types of fisheries and how these fish move, and then we'll go into baits. So if you guys have been following along this series, you guys understand that there's four primary types of fisheries. You have your highland reservoirs, you have your lowland reservoirs, you have your natural lakes, ponds kind of fit into the natural lake deal, and then your current systems like your deltas and your river systems. So understanding which type of fishery you have will better set you up to understand where your fish are going. So, you know, I'm not going to go in depth about all those different types of fisheries. Like I said, I'll link those videos down below in the video description because we've done in-depth videos on all of that prior to this video. But we'll cover it briefly, and then more importantly, we'll get into the baits to catch them. So right off the bat, let's talk about highland reservoirs. Those are going to be your steep and deep, clear water, clearer water typically. So you're going to have canyons, you're going to have long river arms, you're going to have big main lake points, lots of fingers, that sort of stuff. Typically your dams are going to be narrow but really tall, pretty much filling up a canyon. Your lowland reservoirs, they're going to be kind of your lakes in your foothills. You know, the dams are going to be a lot wider, but they're going to be a lot shorter. So sometimes those dams will be a half mile or mile or so, depending on where you are. But typically, you're not going to have the big river arms. You're not going to have your big main lake points, your sheer bluffs, sheer walls, that sort of stuff. You're going to have humps and saddles, high spots, creek channels. River systems, deltas, obviously you're going to be dealing with sometimes tidal systems like the California Delta or down Louisiana, that sort of stuff. You're going to deal with tidal systems, water fluctuation, and then your natural lakes. You're not going to have a lot of big dams, if a dam at all. You're not going to have a lot of fluctuation, and you're not going to have a lot of water elevation fluctuation. You're going to have kind of featureless bodies of water, if that makes sense. One thing I do want to touch on is water level. You guys know that we're from the West Coast. Fish a lot of, well, Clear Lake's a natural lake, delta, but we fish a lot of highland and lowland reservoirs. Now we're out here on the East Coast, Tennessee. So what I've noticed is, depending on where you are in the country, different times of season, different times of the year, the water fluctuates completely different. Out on the West Coast in California, summertime, those lakes, those highland reservoirs, lowland reservoirs are drawn way down. You know, in the springtime, you get a lot of water coming in, filling up those reservoirs. Summertime, the opposite. Out here, you have winter pool where they draw the water down all the way pretty much through spring. So you actually have low water as opposed to high water like out on the West Coast. And then in the summertime, you're full pool. So a complete flip-flop. So take that into consideration when we're talking about these different types of reservoirs. Understand, you know, your lake might be down 50, 100, 200 feet. You know, depends on if you're in a drought situation. I know out on the West Coast, I just got back from Clear Lake a couple weeks ago. Man, I have never seen those reservoirs or that lake as low this time of the year ever. I mean, it's really sad. Out here, full pool. We're out here on Chickamauga. It's summer pool, and it'll stay full the entire year or entire season. So understand that depending on where you are, there's going to be different types of water fluctuation. But understand that if you can stay on these fish, you can pattern these fish, you can have epic fishing all through summer. Even though it's hot, you know, there's a lot more boat traffic out on the water, a lot more pleasure boats, that sort of stuff. You can have some awesome days. You know, I remember videos that Matt and I did back in the day where we caught 100+ fish on camera just to go out and catch them, and it's so much fun. So understand that don't be afraid of the boat traffic and the heat. You know, a lot of people think that summertime, oh, I got to be out at the crack of dawn and off the water by 10, or I have to be out on the water in the evening time and fish towards sunset. Those are great times, but also middle of the day can be some awesome fishing as well. So we talked about highland reservoirs, we talked about lowland reservoirs real briefly, natural lakes, and river systems. You know, river systems, you're going to have a lot more current-driven bites. You know, it all depends on that gate. When that gate opens or those generators are pumping current, those bite windows are going to turn on and they're going to turn off. Fish just blew up over here. Always getting distracted. So now that we kind of cover the different types of fisheries, let's talk about where these fish are going to go on each of the type of the fishery and then how to catch them. So highland reservoir. So you have a narrow, tall dam, you got long river arms, you have a lot of fluctuation. You know, they're drawing water out for the rivers to flow. So now your fishery is down 75, 100 feet. Your fish, like I said, we've talked about this in previous videos, but your fish are gonna split up. Some are gonna stay in the very backs of these spawning bays, the very backs of the cuts. You know, where they spawn, those big flats, they're gonna stay super shallow, and it's all about grass. They're gonna get into that stuff and bury themselves in. The other fish, the majority of the fish, are gonna back out of those arms, back out of those flats, and they're gonna use those secondary points, backtracking out like a stepping system. They're gonna work their way out, this point to this point to this point, all the way out. Their end goal is to get out on that main lake point and find offshore structure. So your rock piles, sunken trees, ledges, that sort of stuff, like your creek channel ledges. If you can find a main lake point that separates two main river arms, and out off of it, there's a rock pile right near the swing in the river, that is money. That is what you're looking for. If you have the opportunity to get electronics that have side imaging, spend a lot of time offshore idling around looking for that. Use your map system, use Google Earth, look where those main lake points meet closest to that river channel, and then look for that key structure, because that's where the biggest fish are gonna position. Lowland reservoirs, same type of thing. You know, they're not gonna have as many secondary points to work their way out. You're gonna be looking for creek channels. So follow that creek channel out of that bay, and look for those ledges, look for those sheer breaks near river channels, creek channels, that sort of stuff, and look for that key structure. You're gonna have a lot more vegetation and stuff in the backs of the cuts. Because your cuts aren't as sheer and deep like the canyons, like the highland reservoirs, you're gonna have a lot more vegetation back in the back. You know, the grass, like I said, grass is key. Look for the thickest, darkest, nastiest grass, you know, fresh, when I say nasty, fresh looking grass, thick grass, because that's where those fish are gonna hunker in, and that's where you're gonna take advantage with the flip baits and the frogs, that sort of stuff. Natural lakes, same thing. Those fish are gonna disperse. About half your fish are gonna stay shallow. About half your fish are gonna stay head out deep. You know, I always think of Clear Lake because that was my home lake. You know, those fish are looking for grass lines. So I like to go out as far as I can and find that grass line edge. Typically, it's gonna be where we talk about color line. Hopefully you guys understand what color line is. It's where the light penetration can't reach bottom anymore, or doesn't reach as easily as it does in the shallow. And you'll notice that kind of color line is kind of the edge or the barrier of where that grass meets, where that grass can get that sunlight and really grow up. So if you can get out to that hard grass line and follow that color line along that grass line, that is where those fish and the biggest fish are gonna be. Now again, you can be in the very back catching fish, you know, punching, flipping, throwing a fluke, a frog, that sort of stuff. But your biggest fish are gonna be out typically in that deeper water. And then your river systems, it's really fun. You know, out here on Chickamauga, you can really catch fish however, wherever you want. You can go out deep, you can throw you know, hair jigs and big worms on the ledges, or you can stay shallow in 6 inches of water and catch those fish on frogs, top water, power fishing, blade baits, spinner baits, all that stuff for the shad spawn. So you can throw whatever, whenever to catch fish. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys understand where these fish are gonna move. Now let's talk about the best baits to catch them in all these different scenarios. Because summertime, I mean, realistically, you could catch fish on 100 different things. But today's video is talking about my confidence baits. When I'm traveling around the country, I always have these baits with me because they work no matter where I go. Now you can always branch out or go down the different rabbit holes of every technique that I talk about, but I'm gonna give you some key baits, and down below in the video description, I'll link some of my favorite baits, favorite colors for each technique and each fishery. So highland reservoirs, we talked about those fish, some staying shallow, majority going deep. Hands down, my favorite way to catch them deep, no matter which type of fishery, is gonna be a deep crankbait. Now it doesn't matter if it's a 10XD, a 6XD, a DT16, a DT20. Again, I will link my favorite cranks for this technique down below, but I like to throw crankbaits that have a lot or bright colors. Again, these fish are gonna be aggressive, you're gonna be moving very quickly, and you're not just sitting on a spot. Let me make that clear. If you're finesse fishing and you find that rock pile off that main lake point, near that river channel or that break, that ledge, go for it, finesse fish. But if you're ledge fishing or you're looking for schooled up fish, you're looking for active fish, you wanna be burning and turning, moving quickly and finding those active schools of fish. So a crankbait, if I'm heading out deep, I am throwing a deep diving crankbait, a 10XD, a DT16, a DD22, you know, those are awesome baits. Again, I will link some of my favorite baits and colors, but anything chartreuse, anything that has some flash, something that's really bold in the water. You know, a lot of the times, different fisheries this time of the year get some kind of algae bloom in it, so it kind of murks up the visibility. Go bright, go loud, go fast with a deep crankbait. Now for you shallow fishermen, I don't know that I have one on here, but a square bill. I'm gonna find that grass line and I am gonna cover water with a square bill. Something with a rattle, something's got a real wide, aggressive thump to it, and I'm gonna burn that thing. The River to Sea Biggie, you guys know that we love that. The BX Brat, that's another really good one. The Speed Trap, that's an awesome one, especially on the California Delta. But a square bill, kind of the flip side of the deep diving crank, is my 1-2 punch shallow deep. What else we got? If I am fishing clearer water and I want to get away from the big 10XD or the 6XD, then I am going to go to other baits. I'm either going to go with some kind of swing head jig. It's a pivot point football. That's a little Z-craw on there. This is a weedless bait, 3/4 ounce head. Fire it out there and you just grind bottom. You're deflecting, you're moving it fairly quickly. Again, these fish are active, so you're moving it fairly quickly through that key structure, and you'll be surprised at it. I held off on this bait for a long time. I don't know if you guys saw that video last year when Matt dumped that 10 or 11 pounder right at the boat on this lake. If not, you should go back and watch it. But I've really had my eyes open to this combo right here, and we'll link some of our favorite pivot point football heads and baits because they all are different. But it's a weedless bait that you can fish down where you'd fish a crankbait typically. You can fish it slow. This time of the year I like to fish it fast, but I really had my eyes open. I wasn't a fan of this setup for a long time, and I was completely wrong. I missed the bus on that one, but that is an awesome bait. And then my last deal, if I'm fishing deep, is gonna be some kind of swim bait. Now, you big bait fishermen, go out, throw your 8-10 inch baits if you want, but for confidence baits and for everybody watching this video, get yourself a 4.8 size swim bait. You can either throw an exposed hook or a flashy swimmer, weedless, depends on what you want or what you're fishing, but some kind of 4.5 to 5 inch swim bait rigged on a swim bait head is money. You know, these fish are actively feeding, they're schooled up, they're chasing bait, they're trying to eat right, and they are machines. So some kind, another blow up, getting distracted, some kind of swim bait. Now, all of these techniques that I'm talking about here in the near future, Matt and I will do completely in-depth videos on the swim baits, the crankbaits, the square bills, the deep cranks, the swing, the pivot point football heads, all of it. We'll do in-depth videos, but just wanted to get you guys kind of a video kind of thinking about summertime. Out here, we're kind of in that transition, but get yourself thinking about summertime. Get the baits ahead of time, the gear you're gonna need, because it is coming. So deep baits, kind of going off track here. If I'm gonna slow down and finesse fish, I keep it fairly simple. Like I said before, these fish are all about grass, but more importantly, they're all about cover. So if you're fishing a highland reservoir or a lowland reservoir that has semi-clear water, there's not a lot of offshore structure. Look at your marinas, your houseboats, your floating campsites, that sort of stuff, because shade is key. These fish are ambush predators. They like to hide and ambush, so they'll sit in the dark looking out. Same thing with the grass. When I talked about getting in the nastiest, thickest grass, same reason. They like to sit in that stuff and look out, sit in the dark, look out in the light, and then ambush their prey. So if you are on a highland or lowland reservoir with clear water, actually it doesn't matter what type of fishery you're on, because we have marinas here on TVA, don't overlook your floating marinas and boat docks. Pay attention to the shade. You know, obviously early morning, everybody talks about getting up early, fishing the first, hour or two before the sun rises, fishing late as the sun sets, but the fish can be anywhere during that time frame. Once that sun gets up high and you're looking at that dock and you see that is the shade line right there, those fish are gonna be in that shade. It positions the fish. It's easier for you to see where those fish are gonna be. So don't be afraid to fish high noon, because those shade lines, they congregate the fish pull to that, and it kind of gives you a target of where those fish are gonna be. With that said, if I am fishing docks, guys, I just did a completely in-depth video on Senko fishing, but hands down, some kind of weightless stick bait. This is actually a Nico rig. It's got a little weight in the head, but I will go completely weightless, wacky rigged, and I'm gonna skip this bait up underneath that dock, because a lot of times those fish are gonna suspend mid-column and just down below that color line, just on that color line where they can look up and ambush shad, bluegill, baby crappie. But that finesse technique, skipping up underneath there or just fishing, you know, the overhangs, wherever the shade may be, a weightless Senko is a must. Now on the flip side, if I am fishing deeper water, the other deal is gonna be a shaky head. This right here, guy needs to trim up. He's taking water to the face. Shaky head. That is that T-Mac by Netbait. That is hands down our favorite shaky head. June bug color, especially in the summer. You know, I talked about the bold colors on the crankbaits because of the algae bloom. Same thing. June bug, Kentucky special. I will link my favorites down below, but that right there is 100% money. If you guys don't have a June bug shaky head tied on, you are missing out. So if I am fishing that structure, that offshore structure, want to finesse fish it, that is gonna be my setup right there. I keep it really simple. Sometimes I'll throw a big Texas rig worm or a big Carolina rig, but that's a different video. Today is just confidence baits and where to catch them. So last but not least is gonna be topwater. Now, it doesn't matter on which type of fishery you are. We already talked about where these fish are going and what they're looking for. Now you need to throw some kind of topwater. And of course, I laid all these rods over the last two rods that I want to grab. But shallow fishermen, a frog. Do not leave home without some kind of frog. Something weedless that you can throw over that vegetation, around those laydowns, around that cover. Again, it's all about shade, it's all about ambushing, but a frog, you know, this is our favorite frog. That's actually the Little Allen color, designed by Matt and I. That is hands down our favorite. We have some other ones as well if they're looking for more of a finesse frog or a more natural color. But again, go bright. I love that chartreuse. They don't miss it as often as they do a more natural frog. But again, you're looking for grass, the thickest, nastiest mat. It's just like an awning or some kind of shade for you. You guys ever been standing out in the sun and you go step underneath the awning and you're in the shade? It instantly drops 10, 15, 20 degrees. Same thing with grass mats. You know, those fish get up underneath there. They look for that dark, colder water, and a frog is a must. So it doesn't matter if you're highland, lowland, natural lake, river system, look for the very backs of your pockets, look for that really bright green, thick grass, and those fish are gonna be in it. If you're fishing something out here on the main river or some kind of current situation, look for current seams, look for laydowns, but look for that darkest area, look for that dark color line, and that's where you're gonna wanna fish this. Now, if you're fishing a highland reservoir or you're fishing offshore, go with some kind of walking bait. Now, I have caught 5-pound plus spotted bass and smallmouth fishing a walking bait in the summertime over 100 plus feet of water. Don't be afraid to go offshore and throw a topwater bait. Again, you can go down the rabbit hole, you can throw big rats, you can throw big wake baits, big walking side-to-side baits, but if you're fishing out your fishery and you need a confidence bait, go with one of these guys right here. This is actually the River Sea Rover. We've talked about this bait for a long time. The Teckle, the Kick Knocker, that is another special bait, just different sounds. But I like to go with some kind of ghosty color, kind of a ghost clear body. typically throw this in the clear water. If I'm going to be throwing a walking bait in murkier water or stained water, something with algae bloom, then I will go lean towards more of that bone color. But don't be afraid to get offshore. I mean, I've caught fish throwing this guy right here over 150 feet off of a main lake point in Shasta. That's a highland reservoir. Those spotted bass, you know, they don't really go up and down when they suspend. They kind of move in and out. So if you're catching them up on the bank first thing in the morning, those fish are gonna back out and they're gonna suspend out there over that deeper water. They're gonna be looking up. They're gonna be looking up for trout, for shad, that sort of stuff. And here comes your lazy walking bait or your whopper plopper or your popper, and they just annihilate it. So don't be afraid to get offshore and throw a topwater. But there it is, guys, kind of a quick, easy, simple rundown of what to do this summertime. You know, find those key pieces of structure out offshore, find those current seams, find that real thick, green, healthy grass, and you will find the bass. Down below, I'll link all of my favorite baits that I talked about. I kind of went through it fairly quickly. I'll link my favorite colors, the different techniques, and everything. But this right here is my confidence lineup. If I'm going to a new fishery in the summertime, I'm gonna have this stuff tied on, and then once I get it dialed in, then I will elaborate from there. But hope this video helps, guys. If you guys have any questions, please leave those down below in the comment section. We will try to get to those as soon as possible. Do me a favor, guys, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. I don't know what it is, but our subscribers are letting us know all the time, hey, I'm not getting notifications, or when I do, it's 2 or 3 days later at night. We do videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday like clockwork. We haven't missed one in like ever, but we started like 4 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do some additional videos. Turn on notifications. That way you guys know when we put them out and when we do bonus videos. Again, guys, we appreciate you. Have a good one.